Shalom again, brethren. I'm sharing another lesson study with you, and I hope that you do take it upon yourselves to examine everything that is presented within the lesson study. Test it, question it, prove it, or disprove it. So the question is, whose appointed times are you keeping? Exodus chapter 12, verse 1 to verse 2 declares the first month of Yahuwah's year and the beginning of the year. Let's read it. Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So this is what Yahuwah spoke to Aaron and Moses while his people Israel were still captive in Egypt. However, he was in the process of getting ready to bring them out of Egypt. So here we clearly see that it is Yahuwah who has established the beginning of months and hence the beginning of years. We read in Exodus chapter 13, verses 3 and verses 4. And Moses said unto the people, Remember this day in which ye came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage. For by strength of hand Yahuwah brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out in the month Abib. We may also read in Numbers chapter 33, verse 1 to verse 3. These are the journeys of the children of Israel, which went forth out of the land of Egypt, with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. And Moses wrote their goings out according to their journeys by the commandment of Yahuwah. And these are their journeys according to their goings out. And they departed from Ramesses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. On the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all of the Egyptians. So we can clearly understand that the 15th day of the first month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It is also the second seventh day Sabbath of the first month. And consequently, the 15th day of every month is always the second seventh day Sabbath within Yahuwah's calendar. We also learned from these three scriptures so far that the day count starts from the beginning of the month. Literally starts from the beginning of the first day of the month. The first day of every month is New Moon Day. Then the count continues on to the other days, such as the 6 work days, the 7th day Sabbath, and whatever feast may be within the given month that we are addressing. Deuteronomy 16 verse 1 reads, Observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover unto Yahuwah thy Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahuwah thy Elohim brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. So now, the question is, how can we work out or identify the appointed times of Yahuwah? Let's see when is, what is, and how does New Moon Day look like within Scripture. In order for us to understand and to have a proper grasp of Yahuwah's appointed times, we need to recognize and understand when his month starts and what his months consist of with regards to holy convocations. So, when is New Moon Day? In 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5, here we see David saying to Jonathan, tomorrow is New Moon. In verse 18, we see Jonathan saying to David, tomorrow is New Moon as well, and that thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty. When we read verse 24, we see David hiding himself, and when the new moon was come, the king sat at meat, like as at other times before. This new moon day is the day that Saul and his family would have gathered together to have a family feast. It is identified as such and confirmed in verse 27 to verse 29. As it came to pass on the morrow, the next day, the day after New Moon Day. So this clearly lets us know that the morrow here is the second day of this month. So we know that the first day of the month is New Moon Day. As also is stated in verse 34, we see that the second day is not New Moon Day, but the first day of this month is New Moon Day. 1 Samuel chapter 20 helps us to establish that the first day of the month is New Moon Day. It is New Moon Day for any of the given months. The first day of every month of Yahuwah's monthly system is always a New Moon Day. We've addressed when is New Moon Day. Now we will address what is New Moon Day. New Moon Day is a worship day, as it is stated in Isaiah chapter 66:23. It tells us that in the kingdom we will be worshiping on New Moon days and seventh day Sabbaths. New Moon Day is different from the seventh day Sabbath in the sense that the offerings for New Moon Day are greater than those for the seventh day Sabbath. New Moon Day, priestly work can be done. New Moon Day, you can cook, whereas on the seventh day Sabbath, you're not supposed to cook. The similarities with New Moon Day and the seventh day Sabbath is that there's no buying or selling on either one of these worship days. When we read in Numbers 28, verse 11 to verse 15, it reads, "And in the beginnings of your months ye shall offer a burnt offering unto Yahuwah, 2 young bullocks, and 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year without spot, and 3/10 deals of flour for a meat offering, mingled with oil, for 1 bullock, and 2/10 deals of flour for a meat offering, mingled with oil, for 1 ram, and a several tenth deal of flour mingled with oil for a meat offering unto 1 lamb, for a burnt offering of a sweet savour, a sacrifice made by fire unto Yahuwah." Verse 14 reads, "And their drink offerings shall be a half an hin of wine unto a bullock, and the 3rd part of an hin unto a ram, and a 4th part of an hin unto a lamb. This is the burnt offering of every month throughout the months of the year." Verse 15, "And 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, unto Yahuwah shall be offered, beside the continual burnt offering and his drink offering. So we see here that this offering for New Moon Day is a tremendous offering. This was supposed to be done every month throughout the generations until Yahushua came to be that ultimate sacrifice. In Ezekiel chapter 46 verse 4, the burnt offering that the prince shall offer unto Yahuwah in the Sabbath day shall be 6 lambs without blemish, and a ram without blemish. And the meat offering shall be an ephah for a ram, and the meat offering for the lambs, as he shall be able to give, an hin of oil to an ephah. So we see that the offering for the 7th day Sabbath would have been much less than what was presented for the New Moon days. When we read also here in Ezekiel chapter 46 verse 1, it lets us see that the New Moon Day is a worship day, similar to that of the 7th day Sabbath. Ezekiel 46 verse 1, Thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, the gate of the inner court that looketh towards the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be opened, and in the day of the new moon it shall be opened. So we see that new moon days and 7th day Sabbaths were both worship days, whereas the 6 work days, they were not worship days. When we read Amos chapter 8 verses 4 to verse 5, it also lets us see that new moon days were not for buying or selling or working servile work. We can read this verse and see what the context helps us to understand about New Moon Day. Amos chapter 8 verses 4 and verses 5. Hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy, even to make the poor of the land to fail, saying, When will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn, and the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small, and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit. So we see here that these Israelites, they had a form of godliness because they were pretending to keep the new moon days and the Sabbath days, but in truth and in fact, they were desirous for these days to go by so that they could go and sell and do things that are contrary to Yahuwah's commands. So not because a person looks like he's keeping the commandment means that he's keeping the commandment. Work, however, for Yahuwah could be done on the new moon day, as is displayed in Exodus chapter 40, when Moses was bid and allowed to finish the tabernacle for Yahuwah. You can read Exodus chapter 40 on your own, as it is a very long chapter. As I would have stated earlier on, as mentioned in 1 Samuel chapter 20, New Moon Day was a family gathering of sorts. Saul's family and David's family gathered on New Moon's Day. This is demonstrated in 1 Samuel chapter 20. It begs us to ask the next question. How is New Moon Day identified? How do we know for sure when we look at the moon that we can say, well, this is New Moon Day? Enoch chapter 78 verse 8, it tells us that all her remaining light, this her that is spoken of here is the moon, all her light disappears on the 15th. This 15th day is mid-month, and in the middle of the month, all of the light from the moon wholly disappears. Then when we read in Enoch chapter 78, verse 12 to verse 13, we are told, and on the first day she is called new moon. On which day? The first day she is called new moon. For on that day the light rises upon her. She becomes full moon exactly on the day when the sun sets in the west, and from the east she rises at night, and the moon shines the whole night through till the sun rises over against her, and the moon is seen over against the sun. So this is clearly explaining what new moon day visually looks like what occurs that lets us know this is new moon day. The book of Ecclesiasticus, it's also known as Syriac. It's found in the section titled or entitled the Apocrypha. Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 verse 6. He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world. From the moon is the sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection. The month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven, the beauty of heaven, the glory of the stars, an ornament giving light in the highest places of Yahuwah. At the commandment of the Holy One, they will stand in their order and never faint in their watches. So here we see in Ecclesiasticus that it works hand in hand with Enoch chapter 78 with regards to the description of the moon, the purpose of the moon, and what the moon does within the Shemayim. Again, we go to another apocryphal book, 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 45 to verse 46, and it reads, Upon the 4th day thou commandest that the sun should shine, and the moon give her light, and the stars should be in order, and gavest them a charge to do service unto man that was to be made. So we see here again that the sun, the moon, and the stars, in particular the moon, is charged to do a service unto man. This is why the psalmist in Psalms 90 was able to speak so boldly and clearly with regards to this very topic. He says, Psalms 90 verse 11, Who knoweth the power of thine anger? Even according to thy fear, so is thy wrath. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. David would have known the book of Enoch as well as Ezra, and he would have read them. And once he would have read them, he would have applied that understanding so that his heart would attain the wisdom of knowing, like he displayed in 1 Samuel chapter 20 when new moon day was. He would have also known Exodus chapter 12, Leviticus chapter 23, Numbers 33 verse 1 to verse 3, Deuteronomy 16 and 1, and many other passages that tells us that new moon day is the first day of Yahuwah's month. Now that we know when is new moon day, what is new moon day, and what identifies new moon day, or the characteristics that the moon phase displays to let us know what time it is, we also need to know and remember that the stars, they also rule the night with the moon. As is mentioned in Job chapter 38, verse 1 to verse 33, and also in Job chapter 9, verse 9. And I read Job chapter 9, verse 9. Job chapter 9, verse 7. I'll read from verse 7. This is what Job was expressing or replying back to Yahuwah in a conversation that they were having. Job says, which commandeth the sun, and it riseth not, and sealeth up the stars, which alone spreadeth out the heavens, and treadeth upon the waves of the sea, which maketh Arcturus, Orion, and Pleiades, and the chambers of the south. So here we see that Job understands that it is Yahuwah who has made the stars. Job is not challenging Yahuwah. Job is confessing and admitting, look, it's you that done this. When we read in Job chapter 38, verse 31 to verse 33, it reads as Job chapter 38, verse 31 to 33. This is the question again that Yahuwah asked to Job. Canst thou bring forth, verse 31. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Knowest thou the ordinance of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? The answer that Job would have to answer is no. The answer that any one of us that's living on the earth today would be no. The ordinances, the laws that govern how the moon, the sun, and the stars operate, these ordinances were issued by Yahuwah, and they have not changed, brethren. As mentioned earlier on, the sun, the moon, and the stars, they help us to understand, to know when Yahuwah's appointed times are. And more specifically, the moon pinpoints to us these times. However, we know also that the stars tell us time. For instance, when we read in Matthew chapter 2, verses 2 to verse 10, we see that the wise men would have understand what time it was. In other words, they would have understand the time that the Messiah was to be born, where he was to be born, and when he was to be born, as a result of the knowledge that they had of the stars. The said stars that Yahuwah used to show them, to guide them to the birthplace of the Messiah, Yahushua. Again, also, when we read in Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, we see that the sun, the moon, and the stars are used descriptively to explain of a specific time of something that's occurring with this woman that's with child. The time factor, the factor of time has not changed from how Yahuwah designed it in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 to verse 18. He has designed and placed the sun, the moon, and the stars in the heavens, in the Shemayins, to divide the day from the night. He has placed them there for signs, for days, for years, for appointed times, and to give light on the earth. Brethren, that has not changed. That is still consistently going fluid as we speak. Leviticus chapter 23 tells us that the holy convocations are to be proclaimed. This word proclaim means to call out or a calling out. So we're to call out the feast according to what we see the moon cycle is telling us what time it is. For instance, New Moon Day, as we would have read in Enoch chapter 78 verse 8 and Enoch chapter 78 verse 12 and verse 13. It lets us know when is the beginning of the month by telling us that New Moon Day, or that the full moon, is new moon. Hence, New Moon Day comes after the full moon. It also lets us know that the middle of the month, the 15th day of the month, there's absolutely no light in the moon. With this understanding, brethren, we can go forward assured that Yahuwah's appointed times cannot be corrupted by man, but only be corrupted by those that seek not to serve Yahuwah. Leviticus chapter 23 verse 3 reads, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest, and holy convocation, ye shall do no work. The Sabbath, the seventh day Sabbath mentioned here in Leviticus chapter 23 is a holy convocation, just as well as the feast days are holy convocations. Verse 4, these are the feasts of Yahuwah, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. So, some like to say that the Sabbath of creation is detached from Yahuwah's months. But here we see in Leviticus chapter 23 that the Sabbath is within Yahuwah's monthly cycle. So much so that we can read and understand within the scripture that each seventh day Sabbath always falls on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th days of Yahuwah's months. Leviticus chapter 23 explains in no uncertain terms all of the holy convocations of Yahuwah that occurs on a monthly basis and in this specifically ordained month, as Yahuwah has ordained. The fact that Yahuwah's sun, moon, and stars are still keeping covenant to tell the appointed times for man is a testament to their faithfulness to Yahuwah. Man, however, is still out of order with his own appointed times, such as their dead in the winter midnight so-called first day of their year, which begins in their month, January, and all of their other appointed times, such as Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Lent, Thanksgiving, Halloween, Independence Days varying from country to country, Black Fridays, Christmas, and much, much more abominable times. So, my question is, whose appointed times are you keeping? I hope this lesson study is of great value to you as we press in to serving Yahuwah with all our strength, all our might, and all our heart, so that when he sends Yahushua, Yahushua will receive that people that is prepared for him. Shalom, brethren.